All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Healthspan Academy. I am your host, Craig Shearhart, and joining me today is my special guest, Margaux Alvarez. Margaux started with a bachelor's in international business from Hawaii Pacific University, and then went on to get a whole bunch of certs in fitness. She's got her level 3 in CrossFit, her CrossFit Kids cert, her mobility cert, gymnastics. She has her USA weightlifting level 1. She worked for 3 years in marketing and then 3.5 years as a CrossFit coach. She worked for 5.5 years at CrossFit headquarters as a seminar staff. And then most of you would know her from the CrossFit Games. She competed as an individual and a team competitor ranging from 2013 to 2019, and then decided she wanted to take a stab at the Titan Games and went all the way to the finals in 2020. And then she's been the owner of Prepare and Execute, and most recently started a business called Goat Wine, which is it's a winery and they do fitness as well. So Margaux, thanks so much for joining me today.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I'm thankful for your time.
Oh, likewise. Let's start this with how you got started in this whole CrossFit thing. Talk about how that all began for you.
So I've always been involved in health and fitness. I think it was something my mom got myself and my sisters into, being active, whether that was ballet, horseback riding, taekwondo when we were little. And then as I got older, kind of evolved into sports in high school. And then when I was at university in Hawaii at HPU, I dabbled a little bit in some different activities like outdoor canoe paddling and running. And I really loved that. And then when I moved to the Bay Area, I was looking for something different, did a little bit of like fight fit classes at UFC gym, and was trying to find kind of my niche and what I wanted. Loved the obstacle courses, but I ended up finding CrossFit through some friends, and they recommended it. And so I was like, all right, I was hesitant at first because I was like, I like my running. But once I found it, it was kind of like, that was the end of one road and a beginning of another. So I just love the challenge physically and mentally, but I also love the camaraderie and the community that CrossFit had.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you had more of a background in kind of endurance, and kind of the heavy stuff was what you've kind of picked up on the fly.
Yeah, a lot of endurance. I used to do like outdoor canoe paddling. That was some short races, but also some long races. The longest and the one that was most mentally challenging was the 41-mile race from one island to another. So I think that gave me some good physical strength, but also a lot of mental strength. I played golf for 10 years growing up, and I think that gave a lot of mental components as well, where you can't get upset by one stroke or one hole because you have 18 to 36 holes more.
It's just never ending. Yeah, fair enough. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. And at what point did you realize this is something you could be pretty good at?
So it's funny because I don't think there was like that one moment where like, yeah, I can crush this. I just think I remember watching and volunteering at the 2011 SoCal Games when there was still a Southern California Games area, and just seeing the athletes competing. I was like, man, I really want to do this. I really want to try and see if I can compete at that level. So I think that was kind of the moment where I was like, let me give it a shot. Little did I know, like I had a lot of work to do, but it was a good place to start.
Cool. So some of the athletes back then that would have been, was that like Annie Sakamoto area?
No. So Annie was NorCal at the time. I actually got to see her when I watched regionals in 2011. I think it was like the first weekend in June. Okay. And then I got my level 1 certificate that second weekend. And I believe it was the third weekend of June. I volunteered at the SoCal Regionals. And that was it wasn't Del Mar, but it was, I want to say like Long Beach area, I think.
Okay.
But like Josh Bridges was there, Chris Clever, like Becca Voigt, Katie Hogan. I remember seeing those three specifically in line to do the master ladder. Yeah, major legends. And I was like, man, like I want to be able to do what they're doing. And I'm like, I don't even know if I can do that weight, but I'm gonna at least try. So it was a good experience and good place to put myself, because I think it's, for me, I've always been, what's the possibility? What is on the other side of whatever aspect I'm looking at? And I won't know until I try. And so some people might say, that's being a risk taker, maybe. I don't know. Again, it depends on your outlook. But for me, it's like, well, if I don't give it my best, or if I don't give it a shot, then I might have regret later that like, I wish I could have, or I wish I would have done this. Yeah. So for me, it was like, I'm going to put all my eggs in that basket and go for it.
I say it panned out pretty well for you. Cool. It's like the 2011 version of people watching the Netflix Games documentaries, right? And they go, that looks like I'm going to give that a shot. But instead it was like on a ranch.
People watching, it's like not that bad. I'm like, relative. It's relative.
Until you start trying to move that bar overhead. It's crazy. Were there like notable coaches or like mentor moments you had back then, or how did you did you find a competitive coach early on, or were you just kind of like, were you coaching yourself early on, or how did that pan out?
I started CrossFit like early 2011. So I want to say like end of February, March. I literally had started like the week or two before the open signed up, like started people like, you should sign up. I was like, why not? It's funny because when people ask me like, hey, I'm thinking of signing up, and I'm like, hey man, go for it. I did. Again, granted, that was 10, 11 years ago.
Yeah.
But I think I think for me, it was just that innate ability to push myself somewhere else. And for that first 6 to 9 months, I was just kind of trying to figure it out. The gym I was attending, they had a program for competitors, but I didn't get much guidance there. So I was kind of like trying to figure out what I would do. So I would go to one gym to Olympic lift. I would go another gym to power lift. I would go to the gym to do my Metcons, and then I would just run on my own. So I was definitely like a billiard ball and just scattered everywhere.
All over the place.
I ended up meeting someone who he's now my husband, but we ended up working together, and he ended up coaching me and guiding me and helping me get to where I'm at. Because if it wasn't for him, I definitely would have been that billiard ball for sure, trying to figure it out. And so he helped me kind of put together a plan and do what I needed to do to eventually get to regionals and eventually games.
That's amazing. So I don't want to sideways too much, but talk about that. Because I feel like that's kind of common, and I know in my own life, it would never ever work out that way where I'm like coaching my spouse. Yes. Is that extra tense going through that, or like how is that?
It's funny because I've talked to a handful of people that have had it had similar situations, whether it's female, male, female, whatever. But it's definitely a challenge because you have to be able to separate that relationship, that personal relationship, and then that coach athlete role, which is doable. It's just very difficult. So it's like, we definitely had a handful or more moments where it's like, he's talking to me as a coach trying to help me be better, but it's like I'm trying to separate, and I have pretty good thick skin where I'm able to compartmentalize my emotions and what I'm thinking. But there's definitely been times where we've got at it. But it is doable, but I think it's very important to stress that communication is key. And communication is important everywhere, business, personal, whatever. But I think especially in a role like this, that you have a personal relationship and then that coach athlete role, it's difficult, but it's manageable.
You have to establish those barriers, those boundaries, I guess.
Yes, boundaries and understanding like, hey, I'm putting my coaching hat on, or I'm taking my coaching hat off, or vice versa. So
otherwise it's just all blends together. It's just like
it can, and that can be a very slippery slope at times.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about in your peak competition years, and you talk about jumping from gym to gym. Like, how much volume were you putting in, and did that increase over time? Did you do an experimenting, like how much volume is too much versus like not enough? Or did you periodize that? How do you plan for that kind of stuff?
So I definitely started out with, I was probably going in 2011, like 3 days a week, like an hour a day, like classes. And I would run probably 2 or 3 days on my own. Right. I was still doing training for half marathon obstacle course races. So that was part of my own training that I just planned. I figured it out. And as I got along and as I got closer to, wanting to compete at regionals in 2012, then I had to make sure I was including a little bit more. So I think I was training going from 1 to 2 to 3 hours. And then eventually I went from 2 to 3 hours to 4 to 5 hours. And then over the years, as I got more adapted to the volume and to the training, I was able to increase to 5 to 6 hours, 6 to 7. And there'd be some days where I'd be in the gym for 8 hours, but it wasn't like 8 hours straight. It'd be like, cool, I'm going to warm up. Right. I'm going to take a mobility session. I'll do some lifts. I'll take a break for lunch or a snack. And then I'll do another lift and a workout or accessory. So I have to make sure to explain people, because when I talk to people that maybe don't understand CrossFit, they're like, 8 hours in the gym. I'm like, okay, it wasn't like 8 hours running. It's different. Yeah. But making sure my body was attuned to it, because I think our bodies can withstand a lot, but you have to adapt your body or have adaptation slowly over time. Right. And I think over the years, physically, our bodies are able to withstand a lot, but then it's about, how do you maintain your body? What are you doing to keep injuries and things at bay? What are you doing for recovery? And all of that's important. And I think people, especially this day and age, 2021, people have realized, all right, you want to do a lot, you have to do more than the previous year, because the bar is constantly getting elevated. Yeah. But what are you doing in recovery that's going to help you stay prime for the next year, next season, et cetera? Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about that a little bit, because I feel like the CrossFit and the circuits and the sweat, that adrenaline, it's like addictive, but people don't seem to get the same addiction to the mobility and the recovery stuff. So did that volume increase kind of in scale with the other stuff, or like how did you
what sort of tools and tactics, how are you designing your mobility and recovery pieces to it?
Yeah. So as my training increased, I definitely try to increase more mobility. I definitely would try to schedule time either before and after my training for mobility. And it would take me like a good 45 minutes or so to warm up. And people that have known me over the years, they kind of joke like, oh, Margaux needs like an hour or 45 minutes to warm up. And I'm like, hey man, I've been able, like, knock on wood, to stay relatively healthy this past 10 years training. And it was because of my prehab or back exercises, shoulder exercises, everything that I did. And so as my volume increased, I increased it. So again, 45 minutes or so to warm up and get going. And at the end, I try to make sure I do some cool down stretching, whether it was static, dynamic, or even band stuff, foam rolling. I also put a high value on body work. So that's, could be chiro, dry needling, massage, ART, whatever it was. And I think, again, your body can withstand a lot, but if you're not doing anything to recover, Epsom salt baths, sleep is huge. I think I was probably competing full time was 8 to 9 hours a night. If I got under 8, I could feel it in the gym. I'd feel tired. Yeah. And I don't get 8 to 9 now. I probably get like 7 to 8 now, but I'm not training the volume that I am. But I still think sleep's important for fitness goals, nutrition goals, whether you're trying to lose body fat or gain muscle, or you're trying to be in a more of a health environment, conscious in your mind. I think it's really important, and people just don't give the stress on it. They're like, all right, well, I can just cut out more sleep and get more done. I'm like, don't know if I agree with that, but everyone has their own, stipulations and their own goals. So again, everyone's a little different.
For sure. Yeah. My whole framework around sleep has changed over the years from like 5-6 hours during grad school to like, man, I'm cranky if I don't get my 8. But I was also not competing for the CrossFit Games. Like, still doing meathead workouts in the gym occasionally.
No, but it's good. I think a lot, whether you do CrossFit or you just do bodybuilding or you do yoga, hiking, I think recovery looks different for everybody, but incorporating some sort of recovery like stretching and mobility. Like, I think flexibility or lack of flexibility is one of the things that people don't put a big emphasis on because it's hard to measure, right? Like, all right, well, how close can I get to my toes? You're not measuring like, all right, I'm an 1/8 of an inch closer. Yeah. Whereas a snatch, like, cool, I snatched 5 more pounds, or I snatched 10 more pounds. Yeah, it's so true.
And it's not as cool of an Instagram pic to say, hey, I'm an inch towards
like, look at my forward fold. Yeah, no one talks about that. And it's funny because when I worked on seminar stuff, I talked to a lot of people about that. Like, the 10 components of health and fitness, or 10 components of fitness that CrossFit deems necessary, and flexibility I feel like is the one that people overlook the most. Like you said, they're not putting a precedence on that. That's not super sexy to put on social media, but that, I will guarantee you, keep you way more agile as you get older.
Yeah,
it's so important.
I fully agree, and it goes up with age.
Yes, I 100% agree. Yeah, and I will note that one thing. I've been, like I said, relatively healthy my entire CrossFit competition years. I had one break in my first rib on my left side, and that was just from a high volume of strict handstand push-ups leading to regionals in 2014. Oh wow! My body was pretty healthy for the entire time, and I think I definitely give credit due to my mobility, my practices of stretching, and post-recovery or pre-workout, however you want to look at it. Yeah. And the reason I've hurt my back recently is from all sitting that I've been doing for computer work, for driving for the business. And so people are like, oh, lifting will hurt your back. I'm like, well, actually sitting will hurt your back probably more.
100%.
But again, I mean, if you're sitting at the computer and you're doing a lot of driving, you're in a frozen position, and mobility and movement is so key.
For sure. It's like clockwork. If I'm doing too much of this sitting and talking, it's like my back's just going to tell me, Craig, you got to get off your ass.
Yep. You got to move.
Yeah, for sure. Did you have mentors for mobility? Were you a big K-Star guy? Did you kind of like, were you on Mad Scientist? Where did you get your template for mobility? Yeah,
that's a good question. I think the first kind of introduction to some sort of stretching was a friend of mine. Her name is Julie DeGarius. She was actually a firefighter. She actually is a firefighter in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, but she used to also do massage. And so I saw her for bodywork in the beginning days when I first found CrossFit. And she taught me a lot about hamstring flexibility, calf, and like how it connects to everything. And I was like, man, this is eye-opening. And when I first found CrossFit, I want to say about a month in, the first seminar I took was K-Star's mobility seminar. And that was mind-blowing because I knew some stretching and like aspects of stretching, but he talked a lot about joint mobility and the difference between mobility and flexibility. I was like, man, this is amazing. So he was definitely one of the first person I kind of like got introduced to that. And then from there, I'd watch videos, read articles, and I just kind of experimented with my body with the stuff that I saw and like what I feel like if I'm going to try to go overhead, like what do I need to do for that?
Right.
So anything that I've learned, I try to share with other people. Cause I know that's an area that I think, again, a lot of people could benefit from.
I think everyone can benefit. That's,
even if you're not in fitness, even if you're just like, you don't do any fitness, like stretching is huge. It'll make you feel so much better.
Yeah, for sure. I took the mobility cert as well. And it was a game changer for me too. It was just amazing. Cause like the courses are all pretty good. I found like they structure them pretty decent, but like everyone in the course, even like the assistants were like doctors in physical therapy. And I was like, man, it was just like a sponge, just picking up piece after piece. It was really cool. And this was actually one of the first ones K-Star didn't go to. It was,
really?
It was 2014, maybe. I think around that time. Yeah.
I think that's when things kind of started picking up where it was hard for him to go to, 'cause I think the one I went to was like 2011. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that was, but I mean, he would try to beat almost everyone, which is incredible. Cause I think a lot of people, obviously people will draw and, they want to see him or meet him. Yeah. But I think there's so much beneficial tools that people can take and utilize for that.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about some of your games experience. You 9 years. Talk about what stands out. What is maybe the most singular memory you can go back to, and like what stands out along those years competing?
It's tough to narrow it to one. I think one that I've referenced and I've talked to a lot of people about was probably 2013, competing at the games for the first time, being in LA in the stadium. It was the 2007 workout when you had to row shoulder to overhead or pull-ups and shoulder overhead. And I think it was memorable for a couple of reasons. One, it was kind of the first time I was able to connect butterfly pull-ups for the entire workout, which doesn't seem like, like I've been practicing, but to be able to have that on the field and have like the roar of the crowd and people cheering and all that just kind of gives me goosebumps right now talking about it. And I think amazing. Afterwards, being able to finish, and I was so nervous because I was like, man, I don't think I'm going to finish this workout. I finished it, and then being able to high five people in the crowd and see people like they're so excited for me finishing. But I was like, man, this wouldn't be what it is without everyone here in the crowd in the community. Yeah. And so I think it was so electric. And the sun setting, the lights, it was just very euphoric in many ways. And I think that's one of my most memorable moments. And it always sticks out to me. And then a couple other was 2015, the pegboard, because that was the first event I had won.
Right. I remember that.
And I think again, it's funny because I've gone back and I've watched clips and people were like, man, you like went crazy on the bike. Like no one else was next to you. But I was like, well, I don't know if someone in the previous heat would like be faster. And it's funny because Amanda Goodman, I think she got close to finishing too. So it's like, if I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have won. So
yeah, true enough.
That was definitely a memorable experience. And I think the other one was probably the marathon row in 2018.
Yeah, we were there for that. And we did not stick around for the whole event, but no. Yeah. That's I can only imagine what that was like.
Yeah. Again, just like those moments where it's like all the work that you put in like pays off, and everyone's different in terms of how experiences they've had, and I just am grateful for those because it's that moment or that celebration of something that you can just really embody and be there for. So it was definitely amazing.
That's very cool, and I feel like a lot of people have those moments like on a different scale, just in the gym when they realize they did something like a local comp or like a class where they're all of a sudden stringing doubles together or whatever. It's just, it's cool to hear that happening like on the big stage too.
Yeah. That's awesome.
What would you say that marathon row is like the hardest workout you've ever done?
No, I don't think it was the hardest. I mean, it was definitely challenging, but I think it's again more of a mental challenge. I think a lot of people started to mind F themselves before it even started. When it was released, people were complaining. I was like, man, don't do that.
Yeah.
Why are you putting yourself in a negative state?
Right.
So I'm trying to think. So one of the workouts that I've done, I did actually last week. I've never done Kalsu, and that's horrible. So for those of you listening, Kalsu is it's a workout in honor of a hero. So obviously the purpose behind it is to focus on that, and like those that are suffering, it obviously has bigger power. So I'm always down to do that and honor those that have given their life. But I think it was a very tough, challenging work because I've never done it before. And it gets very, we'll say hard, fast, depending on your rep scheme and how you plan it out. Yeah. But if I'm looking at events of the games, I think one of the hardest ones was that first workout at the games where it was that 2-mile run to the pig flip, to the log carry, to the sled drag. And that was like 2 different parts of the stadium or 2 different parts of the, arena where we were at. And I think it was one, like I pushed it so hard and again, it's adrenaline and you're there. I think I was running like a 5-minute split that first like 400, 800 meters. And I was like, man, I need to slow down. I'm screwed if that's the case. So I think that's where it was hard because it was just a different element that I'd never been to. So
right.
that's how it is too.
Do you ever get to a point where you want to quit? Is that voice in your head? Are you having to shut that up? Or is it just not on the radar?
I've never had that thought in my mind. I think the only time where I've quit workouts is if like I've hurt my back.
Right. Yeah.
Where I'm like, it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
But in a workout, like competing at the games or regionals, I don't think I ever have that thought in my mind. Cause I'm like, my mindset's focused on something completely different. So any other thoughts, it's like you're driving and on the freeway and cars pass you and it's just, you're not paying attention.
Right.
But
that's mind blowing. I almost tell myself to quit in every workout.
You're like, do I really want to do this? And I think it's also too like the environment that you're in. Like if you're like, hey, I'm gonna go to class, like I'm not really feeling it, like maybe I'll just not do this. I think it's there. And I think again, like depending on the outlook and what the situation is and the environment is, it can definitely, and our minds can definitely mess with our bodies and what we do and want to do.
Totally.
And don't, I think again, give a tribute or credit to that because our minds are more powerful than we think or what we at least acknowledge.
For sure. So on that note, did you have a mental game routine or was it mentality? Was it like meditation? Was there breath work? Like, talk about the mental game and preparation. What type of tools were in the toolbox for that?
So I did a lot of focus on mantras. So I would have like a mantra that I repeat to myself or focus in my mind. I would visualize a lot and whatever plan I had or execution for the workout, I would just replay that over my head. So it's like, if I'm going to lay bricks, I'm going to put a brick down, then I'm going to lay the cement, then I'll put a brick down. So in mind, I would just play the workout in my head and visualize even the small parts. So for transitions and, getting out of the rower to getting to a barbell, to getting to a pull-up rig, just constantly visualizing that and replaying that in my head. And I think that helped me be very smooth and efficient in transitions for workouts for times that was very imperative. Regionals, I feel like was like the most stressful time out of all my competitions because you're competing against, anywhere from, as the rules have changed over the years from 40 to, 45 people or 20 people to the super regions. You don't have control over anyone else except for yourself. So being very cognizant of what I'm seeing in my mind, but also playing it. So I talk to myself and it sounds really weird, but that would help me get to the point where I'm like, this is my plan. This is how I'm going to execute it. And of course, there's always, if something happens, what's my plan B or how do I fall from that? So over my years, I've gotten more, I would say a little bit more aware of that and being more flexible. Whereas before I was like, no, I have to do it like this. And that started to purpose when I was newer or younger in the sport. As I evolved, I was able to kind of look around and say, all right, where am I compared to somewhere else? Like if I take a break now and then they take a break, well, then I can pick back up and, pass them. Right.
So
I think the visualization is huge.
Yeah. I love hearing about that. It doesn't sound, probably sounds funny to some people. It doesn't sound funny to me. Like I think that leading it, I interviewed one of the Canadian gold medalists from the Olympics. And
awesome.
What stood out for me in that chat was that she would like try to make herself nervous in training to like simulate what's going on in competition, which I've never heard of a person trying to make themselves nervous, but she's like, yeah, you're never going to have that environment. So she'd visualize the crowd or like something going wrong or until she was nervous. And then, so she has practice training while she's nervous.
That's really smart. I think that's important because no matter what I do, no matter how many years experience, I still get a little nervous. Even for the Rogue Invitational, I was like, oh man, I'm a little nervous because I know how this is going to feel. But again, I think that's I want to incorporate now if I ever do anything in the future where like making myself nervous. And it's hard because it's like, all right, it's no big deal. You try to downplay it, or at least myself, I try to downplay it. It's like, it's fine.
Totally.
And you're like, oh man, I think I'm gonna shit my pants. Like, what am I going to do?
So true. And like everyone's trying so hard to not be nervous in every situation. I just thought that was fascinating, but it obviously panned out. They crushed the finals and it was, we didn't even have any idea whether in contention, but they ended up beating.
What sport was that?
It was women's 8 rowing.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was. That was cool for me to hear. So you've been at the games, what, eight, 9 times or whatever, however many times you've been at the Titan Games. You met The Rock. Do you still find yourself getting starstruck meeting people?
No, not really. And I don't want it to come out as like bad or weird, but it's interesting because I think and I don't know if it comes back to how my mom raised me and how it was just, treat others how you want to be treated, be respectful of people's time and energy and space. And I've come across people that were either actors or people that you've seen before on shows and movies. And I'm like, all right, like, it's cool. It'd be nice to meet him, but I'm never like, like getting nervous. I think it's again, because I think they're another human just like I am. And I imagine they would want to be treated no differently.
For sure.
And it's interesting because I think when I've been in environments where people are like, oh my God, Margaux. I'm like, oh, hi. Like they get nervous to talk to me or they want to take a photo. I'm like, it's fine. Like, let's take it. They're like, I don't want to bother you. I'm like, it's not a bother at all. But I think I've seen that side of it, or I've been on the experience of that side. So I would play it to the other way where I'm like, oh, hey, nice to meet you. Or, oh, nice. Let's have a talk or a chat or whatever. So I think it's where, again, I just think of them as another human individual. They just maybe have had more eyes and attention on them, or they've done a lot more different things than other people. So,
yeah. I feel like I ever met The Rock, I'd be super sensitive to that because there's no mistaking him. There's no one in the world.
Like, I think that's Rock, or maybe that's somebody else. Yeah. And I think he's super down to earth, very like nice guy, individual. He's obviously very busy and very pulled in many different directions.
Yeah.
But we've had a handful of chats and conversations, not only at the Titan Games, but afterwards. And I think it was just, the conversation kind of revolved around like, my sister passing and his father passing literally right before we started filming. And I think that it was to resonate with someone that has gone through another experience and maybe how I handled it and how I was able to maneuver through it or how my outlook was on it. And I think he was maybe just a little bit curious on, what was the path that I took after him going through that with his father. And I think, and it's hard because not everyone might have that situation right now where they've lost a brother or sister or dad, mom, but at some point, death is inevitable. And it's, it's the unexpected. That's the hardest because you don't anticipate it or plan it.
Right.
So I think being able to connect with people and have those conversations, I think it's important. I think that's why I've been so adamant about sharing my story. But for him, I think it was, again, connecting with another individual that has also gone through a similar situation.
Yeah. Fair enough. And I feel like that's just always the vibe. I've always seen you as one of the more grounded athletes. I don't know if that was intentional or just kind of like, you're saying Margaux wherever you go. But
I think that's definitely me. I think, again, to go back to kind of like how my mom raised, she was very just genuine and authentic with myself and my sisters. Yeah. And being very true and honest. And again, how you treat other people. I think that was like, all right, this is who I am. And for me, I've always been drawn to authenticity. It's like, I want to be as authentic as I can to myself, because that's what I want to put out. That's what I'm going to share. And I feel like that's the type of energy that I want to attract in other individuals. Like, I've come across people that are nothing along those lines. And I'm like, hey, like, respect you and what you do, but I may not be someone that I would hang out with, or I may not be someone that we spend time with. But I think it's, again, I'd rather be grounded and authentic and have those connected people around me. Because I think that's in life, at the end of our lives, what do we leave back as a legacy, or what do we leave back on our journey?
That's what it's all about. Yeah.
100%. Like, you can't take your truck with you. You can't take money with you. You can't take your clothes with you.
Yeah.
I think you definitely take memories or experiences or that genuineness or lack of there for that matter, with you into wherever we go afterwards.
For sure. And I feel like it's easier to inspire people when they can relate to you as well. So that relatability.
I think people want that. I think people want relatability. Like, you watch movies or shows, you're like, man, this doesn't seem real. But then you see something that's like real and authentic. You're like, man, like, that hit me deep, because you can see that, or especially if you meet people in person, you can physically have that. And I think that's something I know for the past like year and a half, like missing that, having that personal connection was like, man, like, I didn't realize I thrived on that so much. I didn't realize that human interaction was so important. And I think as we get older and you see younger generations, you're like, man, you've minimized that personal interaction. I was like, I'm nervous and interested to see how that's going to happen in the future as younger kids grow up and they have less of that,
Totally. Yeah. Man, COVID's definitely opened the eyes for all that.
Hoping more things in person, which we're getting there, which is good.
Yeah. That's amazing. Let's talk about GOAT1, how that, I remember seeing posts that we'd put up after the games, like, oh, sipping back. Was that like planting seeds? Is this something you always wanted to do, the wine, or how did it all begin?
It's funny because it sounds like that could totally be a pun, planting seeds, but it's, I don't think it was the intended plan in the beginning. We started with a small piece of property in Utah and planted grapes in 2011, and I loved that. I loved the agricultural aspect of it. Growing up in Montana, I think being outdoors has always been a value of mine, being able to connect with nature or see mountains or whatever it might be. And so doing that harvest the first couple of years, I'm like, man, I love this. I love the physical labor and work that goes into it, because I felt like it mirrored a lot of things. And at the time, competition, like I'm putting all this hours and time in the gym for a week of regionals or a week of the games to compete. Right. But of course, that's just a small like smidgen of what you're doing in the year. But I feel like with the winemaking and growing the grapes, the same thing. You plant the grapes, you have to let them grow for years. Once they produce fruit, then you harvest them, then you crush them, you press them. And then once they're in the bottle, you got to let them age. So it's a couple of years at least, depending on red or white. And I just love that process. And so I think it was after the 2015 games, Alex, my partner and spouse, we were talking about, what do I want to do after this? Because in my mind, I was like, man, like I finished ninth. I was like, I could win the games. And I'm like, that's definitely a good goal of mine. But I'm like, what do I do then? Like, what do I want to do after? Like, I know I'm not going to compete for the rest of my life. Right. And I wanted to see if I could utilize or blend the wine aspect in. I'm like, well, how do I do that? Because fitness and wine, people don't think those go hand in hand. They're like fitness over here. And wine
probably
over
not
here.
At the same time.
Yeah, right? Yeah. One before the other. And hopefully it's the fitness first.
Is the wine mile a thing?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Is it the beer mile or the row mile? Or have a beer? I don't. Oh man, that'd be rough. But I just love the physical aspect and the hard work that both involved. And I was like, well, if I can showcase and show that you can work hard and wind down at the same time, or again, one after the other, then hopefully I can inspire other people to go after the fitness goals and thinking, they can't cut out their alcohol, or they can't cut out their wine, or they can't pursue whatever goals or aspirations they have. It doesn't have to be just be fitness. It could be career, it could be family. School, whatever. And so we started on, researching the best way to do it. And since the farm was in Utah, licensing is very hard and regulatory there, just because of the way it is. And so we decided we'll get the license in California, get a little paperwork, and then do that. We'll start with a custom crush agreement. And so I decided in 2016, after the games, that was our first kind of year of harvesting the grapes, taking them to the California location where we did the custom crush. And then once that was finalized, I submitted all the paperwork, and holy cow, I've never done so much paperwork, because alcohol is so tedious, we'll say. So much, every state's different, that it took a long time, but finally was able to get my license it was May of 2017, and it was the week of regionals. So I was super stressed. Because I'm going to launch at the games. Obviously, I need to get there. I need to get my license. I need to be able to bottle everything. And so I was able to get the license, and I was like, cool, celebrate later. Let's go focus on regionals. And then once that around, then I was like, all right, cool, now I'm going, now I have my license, let's do what we need to do. And it was a whirlwind for sure. I don't remember the months leading up to it. It was a lot of training, but also a lot of business work and traveling back and forth to California. But it was in my mind, I look back and like, it was all worth it, because if I want to get there, I need to be able to launch. So we launched in 2017 the games, so it's been almost 4.5 years now. Wow, crazy, time flies.
That's amazing.
It's lots of struggles. We ended up moving to Vegas in 2018 to get more exposure with the brand and the company and get into distribution, which we were able to. And so it's just a 2-person team. And so trying to do everything can get cumbersome and can get very stressful at times, we'll say.
Just the two of you running the whole show?
Yeah, we have a fulfillment center in California, because legally we have to go to the fulfillment center. We can't do it alone until we have a specific license here in Vegas. Oh, okay. So we're looking at options for that in the future. But yeah, it's just the two of us. Wow. Sounds like a song, just the two of us.
That is nuts.
It's funny because I talked to, I don't know if you know Ashley Horner.
I don't know.
So she's been in the fitness realm for a long time. I've met or kind of connected through First Form, but she has her whiskey and coffee bar out of Virginia. And we were talking, she's like, so how is it with your team? I was like, so my team is 2 people. And she's like, what? I was like, I know. And it's tough because something is, if you don't get it done today, then it rolls over. And I think that real world experience of running a business, I've been able to connect and share with people that because I've been doing some like 8-week challenges via First Form with my community on Facebook. And I try to relate to them. It's like, hey, like not every day is going to be perfect. Not every day will you get A through Z done. So understanding like, hey, like maybe I only made it through a quarter of my list or halfway through my list, understanding that tomorrow is another day and opportunity. And I think with my sister passing at a young age and understanding that, we don't have every month, week, day guaranteed, that don't get too hard on yourself, celebrate what you did get done,
right.
What struggles you had and embrace them, because how you respond to them will help you for the next challenge you face. 100%. And at the end of the day, like take a breath, have a glass of wine or eat a bonbon on the couch and, take a moment to be with yourself.
I love that. I feel like that's, especially in a pandemic, that's like your own me time it's priceless.
Yes.
So you mentioned doing some challenges. Let's talk a little bit about the type of athletes you work with, types of programs and offerings you have going on with your coaching stuff. How does that all work? So
I used to do a lot more personal training, like one-on-ones back in the day. And then when I focused on competition, I kind of cut all that out. Yeah. And this past little over a year now, I've been working with First Form for a couple of years, about a little over 2 years now, and they do these 8-week challenges. And so it's very kind of broad spectrum in the beginning, bringing in people that want to make a change. My group on Facebook is called Get Your Health Back. And we started that in 2017, actually, to get people to say, hey, because some people see CrossFit as very intense and intimidating. So I was like, I just want you to move. Maybe that's in your garage or that's outside or your living room. And so the intention was just to get people to focus on getting their health back one step at a time. And so as these transformations have gone on, these challenges have gone on, I've been able to help guide people as much as I can through making healthier decisions, whether that's in the kitchen with nutrition, giving them workouts or options to say, hey, what's doable? And I think it's hard because, again, ebb and flow in life. And I think this past year definitely tested a lot of people. And I think mental health and mental awareness is not something that's been at the top of the list. And so with the challenges I've done, I break them into weekly challenges. And one we're actually doing this week is, focus something on positivity. So that could be making a small change, like, hey, I ate a vegetable today, or I drank one less soda. And I think sometimes we have these big macro goals, and those are very important. I believe those are huge because that's allows us to be successful. Right. But it's also important to create the micro goals and look at it at a day at a time, or week at a time, month at a time. Yeah. And so it's been good, so I can kind of help people and guide them. And I'm there as a resource, because I think it's hard because people think, hey, what's the magic pill to lose fat, gain muscle, and be where I want to be in 2 weeks? I'm like, that's not going to happen. Yeah. I'm sorry.
I'm back to earth.
Well, let's look realistic. And again, taking small goals to have little chunks of progress forward, I think it's huge. And being able to communicate that's been great. And the community I've created with everyone in there, it's been awesome. So seeing people post their progress and their workouts and their nutrition, it's inspiring, because I think it really gives, one, it motivates me, but also gives me hope that all right, I want to be able to help people. And I think that desire to help people comes from feeling in a way that maybe I couldn't help my sister. So maybe that I can help other people, even if it's focusing on their health or their exercise or their nutrition. I think it's a way to give back, because I think that's, again, at the end of the day or at the end of our life, what have we done to help people or help better the environment that we're in? Yeah,
that's amazing. Let's circle back to your own habits. So obviously you have tons going on. I don't know how you find time to work out these
Not
days.
At all.
Somehow you're still competing in the Rogue Invitational. Priorities obviously shift when you have a business going on, you have family going on. Where are your main priorities with your health and fitness right now? Are you still planning on competing in the future, or where is your mindset with that? Are we training for health? What is your focus right now?
I think definitely training for health and just longevity right now. I think it's hard because in my innate underground, I'm a competitor, but I think that's not just in fitness, but in all aspects. I'm competing every day in the wine industry. So I'm all right, what can I do to do more? Yeah. But if there's an opportunity that presents itself in the future, but in terms of competing at the games, I'm definitely, I think I've closed that chapter in that book. I love being able to, see how things grow. I love the community. I've been involved in, I'm always going to be involved with the community as much as I can, because that, I think, for sure helped me and guide me on my own path over the past 10 years. And again, if there's an opportunity to continue to compete at Rogue as a legend, I was very honored to be invited to that and be a part of that. And I think for me, it was a celebration of fitness and a celebration of the community from the beginning days to where we're at now. And I think it's so we'll see what happens in the future.
Fair enough. That's amazing. Well, Margaux, thanks so much for sitting in with me. This has been an awesome chat.
Of course. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me.
Cool. And we'll link to your YouTube channel, your website and stuff in the show notes. And hopefully maybe we can do this again sometime.
Yes, definitely. I'm open for it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for tuning in to Healthspan Academy, guys. And we'll see you next time.